to speak to the forum.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies, Honorable Deputy Speaker Lichisa Tsinodi. Our guest of honor, Honorable Naledi Pando, Minister of Science and Technology, Honorable Joseph Njovialema, Vice President of SADC Parliamentary Forum, Honorable Speakers, Deputy Speakers, and leaders of delegations of SADC parliaments, Honorable MPs from the KwaZulu-Natal provincial legislatures, His Worship the Mayor of eThekwini, Councillor James Nxumalo and councillors, Honorable Thulisile Dladla, Vice Chairperson of the SADC Parliamentary Forum Regional Women's Parliamentary Caucus, Honorable Members of Parliament from the various SADC national parliaments, our Secretary General of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, Dr. Esau Chivia, members of the Diplomatic Corps, invited observers and resource persons, staff from the SADC national parliaments, SADC Parliamentary Forum Secretariat staff, ladies and gentlemen. Salutations are very hard work. I would like to welcome you all to our shores, especially to this beautiful city of eThekwini, which is in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. The province is home to more than 10 million people. It is indeed my great pleasure to welcome you all again, including those who were there last night when we did say the same thing, and we will not get tired to keep repeating it. We are gathered here as the representatives of the people of the region, members of the legislative arm of SADC, the SADC Parliamentary Forum. We are gathered here this week to take forward the decisions, as Honorable Njovialema informed us, of the SADC's heads of states and government when they adopted the revised Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan 2015 to 2020 and the SADC Industrialization Strategy and Roadmap 2016 to 2063 in April 2015 in Harare. Our plenary assembly is organized under the theme, and I quote, industrialization and regional integration, the role of parliaments. Industrialization is critical for regional integration. This theme resonates well with the fact that industrialization remains a key vehicle for regional integration, for development and accelerated and sustainable economic growth that would foster greater employment opportunities for the people of the SADC region. The SADC PF has been an active voice of the people through their parliamentary representatives' involvements in various activities such as election observation missions and its plenary assemblies, always aimed at strengthening democracy, stability, and integration in our region. SADC industrialization strategy and roadmap falls within the ambit of the executive. Parliament's role in terms of overseeing its implementation is, of course, our focus area of work, hence our presence here dealing with this particular theme. The oversight role of parliaments in regional policies is crucial to give life to these policies. Parliaments are committed to complementing the SADC strategy and roadmap 2016 to 2063 in the successful implementation of the strategy and the impact thereof. Furthermore, in our continuous efforts to involve and engage with our people, this afternoon we will have a roundtable discussion on migration and development, which will be a side event hosted by the South African Parliament. The roundtable discussion will help us process challenges such as the recent tragic xenophobic events, which have further emphasized the importance of this collective of our challenges. These are some of the discussions that we will be engaging in this week, cognizant of Africa's Agenda 2063 and its vision of creating a prosperous and peaceful Africa. I think, honorable members, it's important to emphasize the importance of the fact that we hope that the next summit of heads of states, which will sit in August in Gaborone, would entertain as part of their agenda the item we are busy lobbying for. And that's why we went to Gaborone, as I think the Secretary General informed us, and Honorable Jovial Lema also touched on it. And last night, we yet again lobbied the head of state of South Africa. And we must say that he received it with both hands, the content of the lobby. If anything, he said to us, but I hope you have done your homework in terms of lobbying all other heads of states in the 14 SADC member states. And we are also able to say to you, we have been lobbying. In fact, we've been lobbying for years. When I was speaker, before I took the past 5 years term away from Parliament, which was the same for Speaker Mutsamai from Lesotho, we were already on the road lobbying. We hope that this time, with the very good support of the Executive Secretary of the SADC Secretariat based in Gaborone, the heads of states will entertain this item. Then we can make progress towards the regional parliament of SADC, where in fact the region can be proud to actually have an institution that would even produce model laws in order to harmonize what we do as the people of the SADC region. And at this point, Honorable Sinodi, it is my pleasure to welcome us all to this 37th plenary assembly session here in Durban. Thank you. At this point, it is my honor to invite our guest of honor, Honorable Minister Naledi Pandor, Minister of Science and Technology, to come and deliver her statement as guest of honor. Honorable Naledi.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker Mbete. I always tell colleagues that the only persons trained in protocol in government are ministers of foreign affairs. So I'm most pleased that I've been given a list of salutations because I'm very bad at protocol. So allow me, therefore, to recognize our Director of Ceremonies, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honourable Tinodi, the Honourable Baleka Mbete, Speaker of the National Assembly of South Africa, and our host at this meeting, the Honourable Joseph Njobuyalema, Member of Parliament and Vice President of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, Honourable Speakers, Deputy Speakers, and leaders of delegations, and of course, I should mention the Vice Presidents of the Forum, as well as the Honourable Members of Parliament who make up the delegations that are attending this forum. I should also recognise the host Secretary of Parliament, who is responsible for ensuring that the work of gathering us here is done appropriately. Then His Worship, the Mayor of eThekwini, Councillor Ngumalo, and councillors of the city, Honourable Thulisile Dladla, Vice Chairperson of the SADC Parliamentary Forum Regional Women's Parliamentary Caucus, all staff of parliaments of SADC, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honour and a privilege for me to have the opportunity both to welcome you and to address you this morning. This event, as has been said, provides an opportunity for the SADC parliamentary representatives to deliberate upon and interact on the important issues of integration and industrialization for development in our region. The revised Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan 2015-2020, as well as the SADC Industrialization Strategy and Roadmap 2016-2063, adopted at the extraordinary meeting of the SADC Summit of Heads of State and Government in Harare, Zimbabwe, in April, emphasizes industrialization as the key priority for our region. The SADC industrialization strategy focuses on value-added industrialization in the context of the current economic and policy conditions prevailing in SADC countries. Our region has as its primary intention a movement up the value chain from producing and exporting basic manufactured and semi-finished goods to producing final consumer and industrial goods. A successful implementation of the SADC industrialization strategy and roadmap of the 2016-2063 period is expected to yield the following: increased regional growth rates of real GDP to a minimum of 7% a year, a doubled share of manufacturing value added in gross domestic product to 30% by 2030 and to 40% by 2050, including an increased share of industry-related services. Third, an increased share of medium and high technology production in total manufacturing value added, a phrase you will have to become very familiar with, honourable members, from less than 15% at present to 30% by 2030 and 50% by 2050. Fourthly, increased manufactured exports to at least 50% of total exports by 2030. Fifthly, increased global market share of exports of intermediate products to reach the East Asian market levels of around 60% of total manufactured exports. And seventh, increased share of industrial employment to 40% of total employment by 2030. These are our lofty ambitions. All of you honorable delegates are aware that one of the problems with resource-based economies has been the difficulty of expanding into manufacturing industry. Of course, having natural resources to sell abroad is highly beneficial to a country. But, and this is our problem, it is all too easy to rely on one sector to the detriment of others. It's all too easy for a resource benefit to lock out manufacturing and to become a resource curse. It is now well known how to avoid falling into the trap of the resource curse. But often, Honorable Host Speaker and speakers, governments are not able to do what economists and others tell them to do. It is not always possible to lower the exchange rate or to set up a stabilization fund. And yet, there are some things that we can and should do. One is beneficiation, and the other is localization. The two processes overlap. The two processes are complicated, but that complexity has to be addressed by us. South Africa has recently introduced policies on both these complex challenges. The aim of both policies is to promote development at home as well as within the SADC region. Many economists tell us that manufacturing is the normal route to development. None of the OECD countries became high-income countries without developing a substantial manufacturing base that in turn provided for full or nearly full employment. The 2009 United Nations Industrial Development Report explains this dilemma in the following way. This potential for explosive growth is distinctive to manufacturing. As manufacturing activity expands, instead of running up against shortages of land or resources that inevitably constrain the growth of agriculture or the extractive industries, industrialization benefits from economies of scale. Unit costs of production then fall, close quotes. In the 1980s, firms in the developed world began to relocate manufacturing to the developing world to take advantage of cheaper wage and production costs. It was in this period that China became the low-wage workshop of the world. China experienced explosive industrial growth, while in many middle-income countries, manufacturing stagnated, and Africa has remained marginalized until now. It is now our turn in SADC. Let me give you two examples that suggest real opportunity. The first example is with respect to the mineral titanium. South Africa is the second largest supplier of the mineral ore that can produce titanium metal. However, South Africa adds little value to the mineral before it exports it. Our Council for Scientific and Industrial Research in South Africa has developed a novel process in which titanium metal ore can be produced from our abundant mineral resource. These new possibilities can position South Africa as a world leader in the cost-competitive production of high-grade titanium metal powder. Titanium is a sought-after metal, especially in the aerospace industry, where aircraft and satellites need to be lighter in weight to consume less fuel. The second example is that of diamonds. Botswana produces the world's most valuable diamonds, or rather, De Beers produces the diamonds in a fair partnership with Botswana. The diamonds are sent to London for sale and then on to other cities for cutting and polishing. It's been like that for many years, until 2011, when Botswana introduced a policy of localization and set about establishing its own cutting and polishing industry. Now, the diamond cutting industry is by far Botswana's largest manufacturing sector. Botswana uses skilled labor together with new, capital-intensive cutting and processing techniques. It has moved up the value chain through the use of science, innovation, and technology. The SADC industrialization strategy requires all our member states to begin playing a new economic role. We in South Africa are committed to the industrialization of the region. In this regard, we have adopted policies to further contribute to the region's efforts. In particular, the National Development Plan, or Vision 2030, and the Industrial Policy Action Plan are two policies we have adopted. The National Development Plan, Vision 2030, is an overarching plan for the country and sets out a broad outline of the country's vision, from the elimination of unemployment, poverty, as well as the reduction and elimination of inequality. The Industrial Policy Action Plan is our country's industrialization plan. We call it IPAP. While it is a national strategy, the importance of the region in South Africa's industrialization and vice versa cannot be underestimated and is firmly confirmed in the Industrial Policy Action Plan. We are absolutely committed to the growth of manufacturing in our region. The industrialization strategy of SADC requires a number of things from all of us. It requires the free movement of SADC labor. There is the unratified SADC protocol on the movement of people, one of 30 legal instruments we've all signed in the last 20 years and not yet brought into action. We have the SADC protocol on the facilitation of the movement of persons of 2005, which seeks to fulfill the full objectives of the SADC Treaty. These require SADC to develop policies on the progressive elimination of obstacles to the free movement of capital, of labor, of goods and services, and of all the people of the region, particularly among member states. The intention of the Protocol on the Movement of Goods and Persons is to facilitate visa-free entry to all our countries, the opportunities for residents, as well as establishment by individuals or families in our territories of businesses and other work opportunities. The exact meanings of the various terms of residence permit, visa, and establishment of families and business are clarified very well within the protocol and should be subjects of study for each of our parliaments. We in South Africa are supportive of the call for a regional parliament. We call for a regional consensus in this regard. I'm very hopeful that in this sitting and further meetings of the forum and the activities outlined by our host, Speaker Mbete, that we will begin to bring into fruition this important ambition of a regional parliament. As I reflected on the matter of the subject of this meeting, that of industrialization, I was reminded of a story that is often told about Mwalimu Nyerere. In 1998, in 1998, a year before his death, Mwalimu Nyerere met with top-level staff at the World Bank in Washington. He was asked, "Why have you failed?" by World Bank experts. Mwalimu answered as follows, and I quote, "The British Empire left us a country with 85% illiterates, 2 engineers, and 12 doctors. When I left office, we had 9% illiterates, thousands of engineers and doctors. I left office 13 years ago. Then our income per capita was twice what it is today. Now we have 1/3 less children in our schools, and public health and social services are in ruins. During these 13 years, Tanzania has done everything that the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have demanded." Close quotes. And Mwalimu then passed the question back to the World Bank experts. Why have you failed? Nyerere challenged the structural adjustment programs that the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the 2 international bodies supposedly designed to prevent developing countries from sinking into debt, imposed on them. He saw correctly the damage that these bodies inflicted on poor countries by limiting their investment in education and health and manufacturing and beneficiation in the name of controlling inflation. He challenged the IMF policies designed to help the rich world's private banks at the expense of the developing world's struggling economies by removing barriers to flows of trade and capital. We now, of course, all have a much greater understanding of why the bank and the IMF failed. Look at what the Greeks told the World Bank and the IMF yesterday. I hope that your engagements today are going to serve to strengthen economic partnerships in the SADC region. This can only be achieved through a more strategic, concerted approach to opportunities such as those presented by the SADC industrialization strategy. The objectives that have been agreed upon as SADC priorities have important implications for you as SADC parliamentarians. Firstly, as a precursor to the finalization of the forum into a SADC legislative body, parliamentarians in our region need to establish stronger links between committees of our parliaments to begin shaping a policy agenda that will support integrated, coherent implementation of our agenda of integration and industrialization. Second, members of Parliament must focus their oversight more keenly and strongly on the executive's action that is directed at advancing the SADC integration and development agenda. We as honourable members should be asking members of the executive what strategies they are putting in place to ensure by 2016 we are beginning to have action. Because we cannot have time frames and have no plan. Third, the ambitions set out in these policies require well-informed, evidence-based policy making. This means, honourable speakers, our members must be provided with research support and must work closely with research institutions such as universities in our countries. Fourth, industrialization requires investment in technology and innovation. Parliaments in the region should ensure that research and innovation are adequately funded and supported. Fifthly, successful industrialization draws on small and medium-sized business success, which then grows into industrial-sized enterprise. Specific attention, therefore, must be paid by parliaments to the small and medium-sized business sector. We don't give this sector much attention, but success in the developed world has come from support to these businesses and has led to the large manufacturing and industrial successes we see in many of these countries. Sixth, and finally, our plans will not succeed if we do not have democratic parliaments that allow robust debate while building respect for diversity. Such parliaments will also address inequality, poverty, and joblessness in our communities. If our parliaments adopt what I think is this minimum platform of action, I believe we are sure to succeed with integration and industrialization. I thank you very much for listening.
There you have it, the welcome and the opening of the 37th Plenary Assembly of the Southern African Development Community's Parliamentary Forum. You heard a lot about talk about the regional parliament, and there's this real push for this to be transformed into a regional parliament. When we talk about the regional parliament, it will really mirror the work done by the SADC, as well as make sure that policies and plans that are taken on a regional level is actually transformed into domestic law. We also heard about industrialization being key to regional integration, and when we talk about regional integration, we're talking about these partnerships and agreements between neighboring states, and it could take form in terms of social, political and economic cooperation between countries. Now, that's how we'll leave it for now. There's much more to come on Channel 404 during SABC News, so stay tuned for that. From us here, take care.